Matt Damon, a name that echoes through Hollywood as one of the most resilient legends the industry has ever known. From the brilliant mind behind Good Will Hunting to the fearless Jason Bourne who rewrote action cinema, from the soldier in Saving Private Ryan to the commanding presence in Oppenheimer, Matt Damon has transformed pain into strength and discipline into art. But behind the dazzling light of fame lies a story few truly know: the unbearable pain of losing those he loved most. The years of pushing his body beyond its limits. The silent moments when applause faded into darkness. This is the untold story of how a boy from a broken home rose to conquer the impossible. October 8th, 1970. Cambridge, Massachusetts, a city of intellect and privilege where great ideas filled the air. But for one small boy, the world already felt broken. Matthew Page Damon's father, Kent, a stockbroker with quiet ambition, left when Matt was just 2 years old. There were no fights, no shouting, only the sound of footsteps fading down a hallway, a sound he would carry in his chest for years. His mother, Nancy Carlson Page, a devoted professor of early childhood education, took her 2 sons to a small communal house shared with 6 families. The ceilings were low, the walls thin, and privacy was almost non-existent. Money was scarce. But Nancy filled the silence with steady warmth. By lamplight, she graded papers while her sons slept, her tired hands smelling faintly of chalk and coffee, building stability out of exhaustion. There was love, Matt would later say, but there was also distance, and I grew up trying to fill that space. That distance shaped him. At 6 years old, he already understood absence, not as anger, but as emptiness. He once watched other children leave school hand in hand with their fathers and learned without words what it meant to miss something you never fully had. Nancy taught him that intellect was never an excuse for arrogance. "You're not special for being smart," she told him. "You're responsible for what you do with it." Those words became his compass. Under her care, imagination became survival. Books replaced toys. Ideas became companions. By the time he reached Cambridge Rindge and Latin School, something burned beneath his quiet exterior. His drama teacher, Jerry Specca, noticed the way he hesitated before speaking, then poured his entire soul into a single line. Acting wasn't about applause for Matt. It was oxygen. On stage, he could rewrite reality, make broken families whole, make endings kind. When his friend Ben Affleck began landing bigger roles, Matt didn't envy him. He studied him, learned, and turned frustration into fuel. At 16, he wrote his first short screenplay, not for fame, but to imagine a world that didn't hurt. At Harvard University, where the air itself seemed thick with ambition, Matthew Damon was a young man with an old soul. He studied English literature while nursing a secret, a story he couldn't stop writing. It began as an assignment scribbled in the margins of long nights at Lowell House, where he shared cramped quarters, thin blankets, and cheap coffee that tasted more like hope than caffeine. That assignment would become the seed of Good Will Hunting, a tale of a lost genius searching for connection, written by a young man doing the same. Outside the classroom, life was far from comfortable. Money was scarce. His mother couldn't help much, and Damon quietly carried the guilt of every dollar spent. He took small acting gigs between exams, hoping one might pay his rent. Dinner was often whatever he and his roommates could find, half a sandwich split in 2, coffee watered down to last another night. In 1992, just 12 credits shy of graduation, Damon made a decision that separates dreamers from doers. He left Harvard to chase a movie role in Geronimo, an American Legend. It was supposed to be his breakout moment. It wasn't. The film failed. The critics ignored him. And suddenly, the safety net of Harvard was gone. He moved to Los Angeles, where dreams were cheaper than rent and harder to keep. Damon and Ben Affleck shared a run-down apartment where the carpet was threadbare, the paint cracked, and a single bulb flickered like it was tired too. Their fridge was mostly empty, milk stretched with water, bread gone stale before payday. But their conviction filled the space the food couldn't. They spent nights hunched over a second-hand typewriter, the click of keys their heartbeat, finishing each other's sentences, chasing a story that might save them. Every rejection letter felt like a bruise. Some nights they talked about quitting, but then one of them would whisper, "Let's try one more page." By day, Damon worked odd jobs, delivering scripts, running errands, taking any role that might cover the next week's rent. He sold what little he owned, including the jacket that had kept him warm through Boston winters, trading comfort for another month of persistence. "We were broke," he would later say, "but we had a story. That's what kept us alive." For nearly 3 years, the two friends survived on caffeine, conviction, and stubborn faith that bordered on madness. Every no carved him sharper. Every sleepless night made him quieter, stronger. And then one long night, they finished it. Good Will Hunting, the story of a boy too brilliant to believe he was worth loving, written by a man who had once felt the same. Success came like sunrise after years of darkness. In 1997, Good Will Hunting didn't just open doors, it blew them off their hinges. Overnight, the boy from Cambridge became Hollywood's golden son, holding an Oscar in his trembling hands at just 27 years old. But fame came with whispers. Some said he and Ben hadn't really written their script. Others said he was just lucky, another handsome face Hollywood would chew up and forget. The applause was real, but so were the doubts. He poured himself into Saving Private Ryan, standing beside Tom Hanks and earning his place among legends. Then came The Talented Mr. Ripley, a descent so dark that Damon admitted it took him weeks to find his way back to himself. Then came Jason Bourne. The role would define a generation of action cinema and nearly break him in the process. The training was relentless. He performed most of his own stunts, tore muscles, bruised ribs, bled through takes, and kept going. "I wanted it to feel real," he said, "even if it meant it hurt." 4 Bourne films brought in over $1.6 billion worldwide and earned him $87 million. The payday was enormous, but so was the toll. He became the face of strength even as his body begged for rest. By the mid-2000s, Damon had conquered everything. The Bourne supremacy, Ocean's 11, The Departed. He was bankable, beloved, untouchable. Yet in the stillness between red carpets, something hollow stirred. "Success doesn't make you whole," he said later. "It just makes you visible." Then came the falls. Elysium in 2013, with its $115 million budget, barely broke even. The Great Wall in 2016 reportedly incurred losses estimated between $75 to $90 million and drew criticism for alleged whitewashing. Damon chose not to respond publicly, understanding that sometimes silence speaks with more dignity than defense. Public scrutiny tested him again. In 2015, during HBO's Project Greenlight, a conversation about diversity drew widespread attention. He later apologized, saying, "I should have listened more." In 2017, amid the Me Too movement, his comments prompted criticism. Damon publicly acknowledged the feedback and expressed regret. Yet through every stumble, he kept learning, and then came redemption. The Martian in 2015 wasn't just a comeback, it was rebirth. The $108 million film soared to more than $630 million worldwide. Alone on screen for most of its runtime, Damon transformed isolation into art, the embodiment of human endurance. From there, his choices grew quieter, deeper: Stillwater, The Last Duel, Air, and Oppenheimer. Each one less about glory and more about truth. He no longer chased applause. He chased meaning. Success tested his career, but love would test his heart. In 1997, at 27, he met Minnie Driver on the set of Good Will Hunting. Between takes, they traded jokes, shy glances, and laughter so unguarded it made the crew forget the cameras were rolling. For nearly a year, their lives folded together. Young, hopeful, impossibly alive. Then fame magnified everything. What had been private began to belong to everyone. During an interview, Matt said something the world took as a goodbye. The words couldn't be taken back. Their story closed quietly. No anger, only distance. It lasted only a year, he would later reflect, yet that brief season left a mark deeper than many lifetimes. By late 1998, he met Winona Ryder through mutual friends. Their love felt like something rescued from the noise. They spent afternoons hidden in secondhand bookstores, evenings driving nowhere, reading aloud to each other in dim hotel rooms. "She makes even silence sound like music," he told a friend. But as his career grew heavier with travel and her search for peace deepened, their worlds began to drift. Not with anger, but with absence. By spring 2000, they were no longer seen together. No statements, no accusations, just dignified silence. "We didn't fall apart," Winona would later say softly. "We just drifted away." Then, one night in 2003, life quietly handed him something different. He was in Miami filming Stuck on You when friends convinced him to grab a drink at a local bar. Behind the counter stood a woman who smiled with the kind of calm that made noise disappear. Her name was Luciana Barroso. She wasn't a movie star. She didn't want anything from him. She was simply kind, grounded, and real. "We met in the most unholy way possible," he would later say with a smile. And maybe that's why it lasted. Within a year, they were inseparable. In December 2005, they married in a private ceremony in New York. No paparazzi, no spectacle, just family and quiet vows. He adopted her daughter Alexia as his own, and together they built a family that grew to include 3 more daughters, Isabella, Gia, and Stella. "The minute I met her," Damon once said, "everything made sense. But love doesn't stay perfect. Fame never sleeps, but marriage needs silence." There were years when Damon's career pulled him across oceans and time zones. Luciana kept the family grounded while he worked on sets in Europe or Australia. "The hardest part of my job," he admitted, "is the distance." They learned balance in a world that rewards excess. She kept him human. He made her laugh. When critics praised him, she teased him about the dishes still in the sink. When fame tried to follow them home, she shut the door gently and turned the lights low. "My life is real because of her," Damon often said. They discovered that love isn't a constant feeling, it's a daily decision. And that became their quiet ritual. To choose, to stay, to believe that what they had was worth the work. In August 2014, that peace trembled. The news broke in the early hours. Robin Williams was gone. 17 years earlier, they had met on the set of Good Will Hunting. Robin, already a giant, could have kept his distance. Instead, he reached across it. Between takes, Robin would pull him aside and talk about faith, fear, and the quiet fight to stay human when the world starts calling your name. "It's not the applause that fills you," Robin told him once. "It's the people who believe in you when no one's clapping." Their bond grew off-screen. Robin took the 2 young dreamers under his wing. When studios hesitated to trust them, he lent them his name, his reputation. "Be kind," he said. "You never know who needs it most." When Robin passed, Damon was on location when the call came. The set around him blurred into stillness. For months after, he avoided interviews. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady, but his eyes told the story. "You meet very few people who change your life forever." Robin was one of them. Even now, when Robin's name comes up, Damon's voice slows. That soft pause between sentences, the space where memory breathes. Robin's laughter never died. It simply moved somewhere quieter, becoming the heartbeat behind Damon's work, the compassion in his causes. 3 years later, in December 2017, Matt said goodbye to his father, Kent Damon. When Matt was 2, his parents' marriage ended and Kent moved out. As Matt grew older, time softened what words couldn't. "He wasn't always there," Damon once said, "but he was always trying. And sometimes trying is love in its most human form." When Kent was diagnosed with multiple myeloma, Matt's world slowed down. The red carpets and interviews disappeared. He became simply a son again, sitting by his father's side, listening more than speaking. Even as his strength faded, Kent's concern was never for himself. "Don't make this the story," he told Matt gently. "Keep living yours." When Kent passed, there were no headlines, only the sound of family breathing through heartbreak. In the months that followed, Damon carried his father's presence in small, deliberate ways. In the calm before he spoke, in the patience behind every answer, in the humility with which he faced success. "My dad was a good man," he said later. "He showed me that success doesn't matter if you can't look people in the eye." The losses weren't just emotional. His body carried scars, too. In 1996, at just 25, he signed on to play a soldier addicted to morphine in Courage Under Fire. He starved himself and dropped nearly 40 pounds in a few months. When filming ended, the weight came back, but the damage didn't heal as fast. For nearly 2 years, he needed medication to stabilize himself. "I did it for art," he said quietly, "but I wouldn't do it again." Years later, around the mid-2000s, when one of his biggest projects faltered, Damon faced something unexpected: exhaustion that went deeper than fatigue. The long nights, endless travel, and fear that he'd lost his instinct settled into a fog he couldn't outrun. "You can be surrounded by people," he once said, "and still feel like you're underwater." It was Luciana who saw through the silence. She found him one morning at the kitchen table, awake before dawn, staring at a script he couldn't finish. "You don't need to fix the world," she told him softly. "Just come home to it." Those words broke something open, not in pain, but in release. "She saved me," he said simply. Today at 55, Matt Damon's life is a portrait of quiet abundance. His net worth, estimated at around $170 million, reads like a Hollywood headline. But money has long stopped being the measure of his success. He divides his time between 3 homes. In Brooklyn Heights, his $16.8 million penthouse rises above the East River, where mornings begin with coffee shared with Luciana and the laughter of their daughters. In Pacific Palisades, his $15 million ocean view mansion sits hidden behind manicured hedges, a place where he wakes to the sound of waves and his children's drawings taped to the fridge. And in Bedford, New York, his $8.5 million countryside estate stretches across acres of rolling hills, complete with a stable, an orchard, and a pond, where he's often seen reading in the early mornings. His garage tells a story in chrome and memory. A Tesla Model X for family life, a vintage Porsche 356 polished but never paraded, a 1971 Dodge Charger with an engine that growls from a wilder time, and a gleaming black Triumph motorcycle for quiet rides along the coast. But perhaps his greatest legacy isn't visible in homes or cars. Through water.org, the organization he co-founded in 2009, Damon has helped bring access to clean water and sanitation to more than 52 million people across 17 countries. The project has mobilized over $4 billion in microloans, empowering families to build sustainable futures. "The real work," he once said, "isn't in front of the camera. It's what you do when it's off." At home, his world revolves around Luciana and their 4 daughters. He cooks breakfast most mornings, helps with homework, and drives them to school whenever he can. Friends say he's happiest when he's just dad, walking barefoot through the garden, making pancakes on weekends, or watching the sunset from the porch. "The movies fade," he once told a reporter, "but the moments around my dinner table, those are forever." Time has softened him, but not dulled him. His hair carries streaks of silver now, his face lines of laughter more than age. He exercises daily, eats clean, and meditates, not to stay young, but to stay grateful. "I've learned that success isn't about climbing higher," he said. "It's about being steady where you stand." And that, perhaps, is Matt Damon's true legacy. Not the awards, not the headlines, not even the fortune, but the proof that decency, discipline, and kindness can still build an extraordinary life in a world obsessed with spectacle. The boy who once whispered his dreams in a cramped dormitory now lives them in the laughter of his daughters, in the calm presence of a woman who never needed his fame to love him, and in a life that proves one simple truth, that faithfulness, patience, and love are not outdated virtues. They are the quiet miracles that keep a family standing. Matt Damon's greatest victory wasn't conquering Hollywood. It was conquering the boy inside who once believed he wasn't worthy of love, success, or redemption. In healing himself, he gave the world permission to heal too. The measure of a man isn't what the world remembers him for. It's how he chooses to live when the world stops watching.